Awake living into uncharted territory together, accelerating your wellness path, plus your interconnectivity at the same time. It's not your grandma's Ayurveda, but it kind of is. It's the Yoga Healer Real Life Show with Kate Stillman.
Hello, it's Kate Stillman, and welcome back to the Yoga Healer Real Life Show. Today, Baxter Bell, your lifespan and empowered elders. This is going to be fun because Baxter Bell, Dr. Bell, was a family physician from 1989 until 2000. And then in 2001, he completed an 18-month yoga teacher training with Rodney E., Patricia Sullivan, Richard Rosen, and Mary Pafford. What a lineup, huh? And so then he became a certified yoga therapist, and now he teaches deep yoga teacher training at the Piedmont Yoga Studio. That was Rodney's home studio that he started. And he offers regular classes also to the public and to people with back pain, adults with disabilities. He teaches workshops and retreats with an ongoing emphasis on yoga for healthy aging. And he's releasing a book called Yoga for Healthy Aging that he co-authored with Nina Zolotov, and that'll be coming out next winter. So in today's show, we talk a lot about, you guessed it, healthy aging and really what normal people should be doing that want to live not just longer, right? But want to have more energy and more connectivity day by day. Stay tuned. Today's podcast is brought to you by my Living Ayurveda course. If you're curious about the power of Ayurvedic wisdom in your daily life, you're listening at the right time. As a Yoga Healer Real Life Show listener, you're invited to my preview training on the most progressive training available globally for living Ayurveda. To get in on my free video preview training, go to yogahealer.com/AYURVEDA. You will learn a ton. All right, I'm here with Baxter Bell, Dr. Baxter Bell, and you have a unique vantage point in this yoga and wellness industry because you come from being a doctor, being a family practitioner, and you left. Yeah. You left. I find it curious too. Like, I wanted to know right away, like, why? So you left Cincinnati and you went to the Bay Area. I'm like, if you had stayed in Cincinnati, would you have stayed? Being a family practitioner was like that part of this big identity evolution life shift.
Or if I would have moved back to Cincinnati after I was in the Bay Area for 2 years, would have I gone back to doing that? So, it was a very interesting time because I didn't know what was going to happen when I moved out to San Francisco, Oakland area back in 2000. It was really a big question for me. I had been full-time family medicine for about 11 years. I'd done my residency before that for 3 years and 4 years of medical school. So I was kind of on the fast track of getting into family medicine at the time. And, I experienced a lot of, shifting emotions over those years as I, number one, really got into taking care of my patients. I love that. I love being in the room with my patients. I saw lots of folks every day. I was at the hospital in the mornings. I had to take call at night, which was kind of the downside of modern medicine, is being up at night and trying to function well the next day, which was not good for my health at all. And really, I probably didn't even realize the impact of that lifestyle until after I moved to California to study yoga at the Piedmont Yoga Studio in January of 2000. So, I knew that I wanted to make this shift because at a certain point I started practicing yoga in the mid-90s. I found it very fascinating. It was one of the few times that my mind slowed down and stopped and reflected and felt, as opposed to being on that treadmill of what's next? What do I got to take care of? What am I worrying about?
Yeah.
What about all these patients that I'm responsible for? And that first practice I did, which was to a video in my movie room at my house, to a Rodney E. Power Yoga video, was it was a revelation. Not the physicality, that was great. That was the hook, right? But really the sweet spot was the end of the practice and doing shavasana and being guided into reflecting on what was going on. So, that was the first seed back in, I think, maybe 1994, 93, 94. Started taking some classes, started to going on some workshops and retreats. And then in 99, I think I was just very ripe for it. The seed got planted when I took a walk with Rodney, who I'd been studying with for a while. And he made this kind of offhanded suggestion that, have you ever thought about teaching yoga? And I don't think I'd had that conscious thought at that point, but it germinated quickly. And I started imagining what that could be like, dreaming what a life different from what I've been leading could be like.
Yeah. Which is so yogic in itself. I mean, so getting yourself out of the cultural box.
Right. And the habits that you don't even see are habits, right? It's that whole thing of just being kind of in this thing, and in the milieu that I'm in, it seems really normal. Yeah. It's what everybody's doing. It's what all my colleagues are doing. All the men and women that I worked with were doing. And there was very little questioning of the path.
Yeah.
And how we take care of ourselves. It's so weird. Just yesterday in class, we were talking about this idea of stopping when you're working every 20 to 30 minutes and doing a little mini yoga practice, whether it's shoulder rolls or breath work, whatever it is. And one of my longtime students is sitting right in front of me, and she starts laughing. She goes, at my new job, my computer actually pops up an option for doing that. But I rarely do it because the culture that I'm in is that I should be kicking ass and working really hard all the time. And so there's this.
Well, and it's a misconception that kicking ass and working hard is done by uninterrupted work, when statistically it's not. So there's just a massive misconception, right? Yeah. So this intermittent, but let's back up to, I mean, when, especially for men, especially for males in a modern context, there's really no social acceptance of reflection. It's like, move
certainly
forward.
Not mainstream, right? Certainly not in the mainstream.
Right? I mean, and that's crazy, especially in the medical profession, when you just see how just simply the benefit of just pressing pause is. Yeah. And then if this is what's like sort of running making the calls for so many other people, if this is the culture, these are the social assumptions that we don't need to stop. We don't need to press pause. We don't need to reflect. We don't need to reboot. Right. And then we're making calls more or less, for what people are putting in their bodies. We're absolutely altering their chemical realities with pharmaceuticals.
Sure.
And we're doing this without much pause. And like you said, there's just a lot of, you didn't use the word sleep deprivation, but there is a lot of sleep deprivation in the Western medical, doctors, nurses, caretakers, hospital workers in general. And you compile all these together, and it's like, it starts to seem nuts, doesn't it?
It absolutely does seem nuts. It is nuts on a very basic level. And, think about, if you put all that together, Kate, what we're talking about is like unremittent stress in people's lives that they're not actually addressing in a healthy way.
And they're the ones taking care of the other people. Like, they're the experts. They're the doctors that we're told to listen to.
Yeah. And when I was practicing as a family doc, there were two options. Either I completely unplugged and just didn't pay any attention. I went on a vacation and just tried to forget about my stress for a week, and sometimes I'd do physical things, but, sometimes it was just, let's get away. Or you would take time to go to a professional meeting where you sat in a dark room with slides for 8 hours, at a continuing education seminar that, again, had no built-in wellness part of the program.
Yeah.
So one of the cool things is when I did leave and come out to the West and took a pause is I also studied acupuncture through a medical acupuncture program that's put on by a guy named Joe Helms. And, I immediately emailed when I was going to go to this training and said, hey, I'm in this yoga teacher training program. Could I offer a free class in the morning to the doctors coming from around the country to learn about acupuncture? And they were like, awesome, that would be great. And another guy that I met there was offering Qigong. And so right away, I was stepping into a whole different mindset. The alternative or complementary practices have been doing this all along. And I felt like I was finally with kindred spirits. So here I was learning about a new skill that I wanted to offer my patients, but I was also being able to offer a little bit of what I was learning about yoga and its benefits to docs around the country, which was a super great shift for me when I first started studying in 2000, both yoga and acupuncture. It was pretty sweet moment for me.
Yeah, I bet. Because now all of a sudden there's like, it's like the third thing, it's like not this, not that. And this third thing arises where you have a synergy of skills and in a much different, it's such a different type of culture. Like, as soon as we enter, a situation where people are trying to learn and are asking the right questions and seeking help personally, but also professionally, it's just a totally different soup to swim in, right? Than when you're going into a really mainstream hospital or mainstream experience, or even, to me, that's where it gets so curious. It's like in the Bay Area and in like these little pockets around though, in certain countries they're much more advanced, certain pockets around the United States,
Right.
you have much more of an assumption of like people are actually, hydrating. They're drinking water, not soda or pop or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
They're exercising. They're using Pomodoro timers. Cheers. Yay. They're getting enough sleep because they get that that's a big part of the puzzle. Right. And they're doing these self-modulation practices where they get that like, oh, if I want my brain to function, like I better find the chill switch,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's like most of the population, and even like I get Time Magazine. I'm not sure how we started getting Time Magazine, but like, sometimes magazines just start coming to your house.
Right. Yeah.
And, it's like always about the next drug. I'm like,
or the next technology.
Or the next technology.
Yeah.
And it's
so
a total disrespect
device.
for human technology, right? So it's like a disrespect for our inbuilt technology, which yoga starts to awaken. So in your experience, like how do we start to bridge that gap?
Well, I think the exciting thing is just how deeply we're starting to penetrate into the regular society and the regular culture. So for me, I'm continually encouraged when we do get the new statistics out about the expanding base of people that are, number one, practicing yoga regularly, and number two, that are interested in trying it in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
So, that's a wonderful question I'd love to see coming up. Like, are you thinking about taking a class? And often people say, yes, I'm hoping to do that in the next 6 to 12 months. And as I think I heard you mention in your recent conversation with Desiree, the fastest growing portion of people trying out yoga is people over 65, which is cool. Mind-blowing, right? Isn't
so
that just
cool.
the
that
largest?
Is mind-blowing.
Group,
that's mind-blowing.
Right? Yeah. And so that's really great. And what I think is helpful is that when some of the folks that you've been interviewing, and when I get to include myself in that pool of people where we maybe have a degree in a kind of a Western respected field like family medicine or whatever, and we start talking about these things, sometimes a few people who wouldn't listen before start to perk up and go, what was that all about? There's a doctor talking about yoga. And we can talk about the great, volume of research that's starting to support all the observations we made for a very long time. And I think those are the encouraging shifts. There are others, but those are some of the encouraging shifts.
Yeah.
On my blog, Yoga for Healthy Aging, we've got this guy, Ram Rowe, who's been writing for us. He's a research scientist, but he's also an Ayurvedic practitioner and teaches at the Ayurvedic school out in Grass Valley, California. Mm. And so this guy is like rigorous. And when he writes an article, he's done some serious research on what's out there. And so we've had him talking about brain health now for like 2 years. And so my level of understanding as someone curious about that keeps going up. So kind of getting the word out through blogs and through podcasts and these venues, I think is really helpful. And just spreading the word far and wide as we can go.
Yeah. So with your yoga studies and yoga therapeutic studies, and I mean, yoga, we have the 5 kosha model.
Right.
And how, as you're learning this as a family physician, like what sort of like light bulbs or ahas were going off for you, if any?
Well, yeah. So for me, the first thing was just really being with my body in a completely different way. So right away, the first kosha right there, boom. I'm like, wow. I'm actually feeling where things are, as opposed to just saying, okay, body, let's go rock climbing, or let's hop on the bike and ride for an hour. Because I was doing kind of triathlon stuff at the time, which was great on some level, but it was also about pushing and achieving and, getting my times down and stuff like that, which is okay. It's okay to have goals, but I really wasn't, communicating well with my body. So that was really great. And then also, I think during that moment of Shavasana, kind of having a different relationship to my consciousness, just expanding my understanding of what consciousness was.
Yeah.
I had already had a really strong interest in the works of writers who were looking at mythology and, common myths across time and traditions. And so I had this kind of an interest in spirituality that had already been blossoming before I met yoga. But I think the yoga was kind of unlocking that interest even more. So, there was the physical, there was the kind of the intriguing consciousness aspect. There was the practical details and the pragmatic approach of yoga, which fed another layer of the kosha model for me. So, I didn't know about the koshas when I started doing yoga, but when I did start studying yoga, it was like, oh, this is where definitely on multiple levels I was getting turned on in a way that I hadn't before to other things.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, it's fascinating too, how like in the typical person going to a Western doctor or specialist, it's reductionist, right? And they're looking at a piece instead of
You're
looking
trying to
at
find the thing that caused the thing, right? Or they're and sometimes not even that. There are sometimes they're realizing, wow, this is one of those situations. So the other extreme is, reductionist on one hand, and then overwhelmed by patients with difficult symptom presentations that don't fit into a neat, quick 10-minute box.
Right.
And then instead of actually looking underneath looking for some root causes. I mean, even in Ayurveda, we look at, what's happening with diet, sleep, sex, whatever it might be. But saying, you know what, I'm just going to start treating the symptoms.
Yep.
They're having trouble sleeping. I'm not going to get into why they're having trouble sleeping. I'm just going to give them a sleeping pill. Or, so there's also that aspect that happens to modern medicine. So sometimes reductionists, this is strep throat, penicillin, boom, done, out of the room. Or, wow, this is really complicated. Boy, my time is up. Let me treat a couple of symptoms.
Yep.
And then sometimes never coming back and saying, let's dive into looking underneath at lifestyle and things that we can actually that you can contribute as the patient to, and look at that and empower you in some way to do something for yourself.
Right. Well, I mean, and back to the coaches, like it's such an easy checklist if you're trying to look at the whole in the relationships between the parts, right? So you even have a sense of like, oh, what's going on here? Or, like you were pointing to consciousness before, like, is this person spending any time just as consciousness as opposed to as a human doing?
Right.
Or a human achieving or a human struggling.
Yeah. And that paradigm is a nice one, because we can think of them as dimensions that are interconnected like a net, right? I love that image of the Indra's net. And so if I tug on my Anamaya kosha, it's going to ripple through all the others. So, and so that's why the holistic approach to people that, Ayurveda and yoga, to some extent, yoga therapy, we try to make that a big part of what we do in that system, that all these things are kind of redefining what it means to interact with a healer, and also how we are with ourselves as the person, the patient, the client who's trying to live a healthier life in some way.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it seems like if they don't have a team, if they don't have like a healthy AG team or a Thrive team or whatever you want to call your team, but if you don't start to take the responsibility of developing your own team so that you're getting multiple opinions, you're getting multiple approaches, you're hopefully these people have some baseline beliefs and understanding and are able to not be just directly conflictual. But that's going to help. Like, to me, that's one of these necessary, if we look at just our own decade after decade after decade in front of us, aging process that we might potentially be able to live into, and really looking at like, what skills do I need to have? It's like, well, I need to be able to put a team together of experts for me, because things will happen. It's like we have a body and things don't always go as planned, and as much preventative as we can do. And now, like, there's always more, and things are getting better. Like, the teachings are getting better in so many domains, in so many dimensions simultaneously. And just like, do I have access to the best of what I'm going to need? Because we can't expect our Western doctor to start to meditate and start to understand a 5 kosha model and start to have 35 minutes to see us instead of 8 minutes, or et cetera. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think that, when you look at around the country, there are some little teeny pockets. In Maryland, I was there for a conference, and I got to go visit this center there where they've gotten some funding from a wealthy individual, and they got like a $30 million grant, and they set up a team approach to healthcare. And so you come into the office, and you might be there to see the family doc, and you're talking about this or that, and the doc goes, have you ever done any yoga? And there's actually a yoga therapist there on site who they step out and say, come on in for a minute. And in the moment they meet, and then they realize, it's been a year since your annual female exam. Our OB is in today. OBGYN's in today. Let's get you scheduled for that at least. Or if you have time, maybe they can fit you in. So, it's a really interesting thing to see the creative process happening even within the confines of what we think of as traditional Western medicine. There are definitely people kind of pushing through that edge a little bit and thinking more creatively and bringing things like yoga and Ayurveda into the mix, so that they're presenting a team to people and giving them that experience, because we don't have that experience normally, right?
No.
I mean, one of the frustrations I had as a family doc is my patients were very loyal to me, and they actually didn't want to go see other people or employ another group of practitioners as their team. So I think also creating this idea that there is a team out there that you can put together or that you can find that's going to elevate your possibility of living healthfully into older age. We talk about this a lot on Yoga for Healthy Aging. We talk about increasing health span, not lifespan.
Yeah.
And so it's like this whole different shift. Like, I want to be as healthy as I can for the years that I have available to me.
Yeah.
If I live to 80, that's great. Well, I'm going to beat the odds by a couple of years. But, if I live to 75 and 74 of those years are relatively healthy, that's an awesome quality of life that I'd love to experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And those other skills like maintaining our independence and staying strong and staying mentally vibrant and engaged in community. All those things are the other skills that we have to keep talking about and bringing up, because otherwise people kind of sleepwalk through the last 30 or 40 years of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So often.
Yeah. All right. And when we come back, Dr. Bell and I dive a little bit more into what's happening with the empowered elder population and what's going on with biohacking. How long do we live? What is longevity really all about? And how do we want to feel day by day as we get older? We obviously tap into some of the beliefs that are totally outdated in modern culture, and how to reroute those beliefs into ones that actually lead you to feeling better tomorrow. Stay tuned. I am so glad I dove into Ayurveda in my early 20s. Now I'm 43. I'll be 44 in a few weeks. I raised my kid with Ayurvedic wisdom. I've navigated the changes in a woman's life from single to partner to with child. I've navigated the growth of my steady career explosion with the tools and the skills. The fundamental philosophy of Ayurveda keeps giving back. I look forward to being 50 someday, 60 someday, 70 someday, 70, 80, 90, 100, and beyond. The basic habits of longevity, the habits of yogis, and the wisdom system to get better, smarter, wiser, and in deeper body integrity as you cycle around the sun each year is something I got to jump on early in life. It's never too late to step into Thrive. Learn Ayurveda. It'll keep giving back to you throughout your lifetime. Go to yogahealer.com/Ayurveda, AYURVEDA, for my newest free video training. You will love it. That's yogahealer.com/Ayurveda. Well, and especially with the changes in our modern food and lifestyle, right? And just the amount of like TV people are watching, et cetera. It's like the odds are against you unless you're proactively creating the future you want. But yeah, this health span, to me, let's talk about this more, because I know in my courses and my forums, like one of the things we see daily is like, I feel better than I've ever felt. And it's regardless of age. Like today I saw posted by someone who is 60, right?
Yeah.
Like how I felt at 30 and how I feel now is like night and day. And she was talking about cultural assumptions and beliefs, right? About how for her in her friend group, it's challenging because everyone she's gotten older with, right, has this assumption that you're supposed to feel like crap as you get older. And things are supposed to get harder. I'm
just getting older. That's just the way it is, right? We hear that all the time. Or what I heard all the time is I'm falling apart. When I was just in my practice, before I had started exploring other alternatives to how I could be a healer in my communities. So, I had this really great experience. This fits in perfectly with what you just mentioned, is leading a little Yoga for Healthy Aging workshop not too long ago. I had a woman who's now 72 mention that about 6 years ago, she made a commitment to start practicing yoga regularly. She just decided, you know what, I've got to do something.
Yeah.
And so she did that. And so she raised her hand and said, can I just make a statement to this group of people that are of diverse ages? She said, I am 70 years old and I'm actually stronger than I was at 65. And actually, I feel stronger than I ever have in my whole life. The same thing you're hearing from people, right?
Yep.
And she said, I want to say this specifically because that's not what we're being told by mainstream media.
Right.
We're being told to expect problems, to get help, to be on medications, to, expect that you're going to need more and more help doing just everyday activities. And I'm here to tell you that's not my personal experience. And I think we all need to be aware of that. So, and like you, I'm getting a lot of those stories back on my blog. People write in and say, hey, here's my reality. Am I off base here or what's going on?
Yeah.
Because they're kind of surprised. I'm actually finding my balance is improving. And I never thought I would be feeling physically balanced. I'm noticing my mind is improving. Like my memory got better this last year. And all I did was start doing these interesting practices in yoga where I'm actually challenging my right and left side. So sometimes I always say it can be pretty simple, the things that you can integrate into your life that can have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And then when people start to get a little taste of that, then we can start to layer on maybe the more sophisticated aspects of these traditions to taking people where they want to go with that. Right?
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's like, know what you want out of it for that. And then this whole other world's going to open. You're going to want totally different things in a year, in a few months, or in a few years. And yeah.
And so, that's why I focus on kind of these 4 physical skills of working on strength. I think if you had to choose one, I would start with building strength, because again, of this assumption that you're going to get weaker as you get older. Yes, we have skeletal muscle atrophy that does happen. This is documented. And some people, it's bad enough they get this thing called sarcopenia, but it's not inevitable. It's actually influenced by your lifestyle. So, let's start with strength. Flexibility is a good idea if we're really stiff, but not everybody's stiff, right? But so flexibility is good. Balance, super important. And then advanced balance is improving agility, right? So that I can actually weave my way down Piedmont Avenue in Oakland. That's crazy at 3:00 in the afternoon. It's just a neighborhood, but there's people with walkers and bags and stuff. And literally, you got to be agile to get down the street. And then and then also on top of that, it's like cultivating good cardiovascular health, which we know we can do really easily, and good brain health. And then maybe looking at other things. I think if you kind of hit those 6 things and work on maintaining your independence, and probably work a little bit on equanimity, because stuff's going to happen. Stuff that we don't want is going to happen and show up. We are going to get sick. We're going to get to a point where things are get difficult. And, the yogic practices of equanimity, I think, are really helpful for that. So those are all the main things that kind of got distilled for me over 6 years of writing about aging and health and yoga. It was like, wow, these themes keep coming up that are important themes for people.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those are some key things that I look at as, a recovering family doctor, as a medical acupuncturist, and as a yoga teacher and yoga therapist. These are some of the main themes that I like to talk with people about.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, to me, it comes down to when people start to do something that involves new ways of moving and breathing and relating to themselves, integrity increases, right? And so when we get that like 70-year-old saying, I'm stronger than I've ever been, it's like a tensile strength. It's an internal strength when there's no interruption by lack of consciousness, or what in Ayurveda they call ama, like when there's, whether it's, on a physical level or on a subtler level than physical, when that gets digested, there's now an integrity that happens, and that integrity makes us so much more. I mean, I like how the yogis call it svatantri. It makes you more free. And in that freedom, you're agile. You're able to move this way. You're able to move that way. You're able to do things you've never done before. And you have an agility of mind. So you're able
you have it on the mental, emotional level. I think that's something that maybe, you and I and other people who are out there getting the message out have to remind people. Okay, we're kind of body obsessed a little bit in our culture, but let's look at the benefits just a little bit. Let's look at the benefits, just a wee tad. Let's look at the benefits that come on the mental, emotional level, so that, that strength actually has its own manifestation there as well, not just in me getting up and having a great day physically moving around in my world, but actually dealing with the other issues that come up, the sick, uncle, or my child who needs extra care, or whatever it is, that we get stronger in those ways and we have more freedom, and we aren't reacting in kind of that fight or flight response, which narrows our responses to like 4 or 5. Yeah. As my friend Dan Libby, the psychologist, talks about. He says, we have these 4 kind of go-to responses, but when we actually have the yogic mindset, our choices expand. Those 4 are still in there, but now we've got like 40 other choices, right? So we have a freedom that says, I have a choice to actually react with humor or with compassion or with understanding. It's so beautiful, right? Yeah. And I hear about that in class too, and also from people writing. It's like, oh gosh, I made a better choice today than I ever would have five years ago before I started practicing regularly.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, I mean, I talked a little bit on the beginning, or I asked you about it with like identity evolution, when you made a shift to do something totally different, to be in a different place, to be with different people, to do things differently. A lot of us in Western culture, we don't, I mean, and it's probably global, but we don't think of ourselves as plastic, as I like to say, think of yourself as a verb, not a noun. Like, who you were yesterday does not necessarily have to be who you are tomorrow. Like, you can invent your next reality. And part of when we start to develop these yogic skills, and to me, it doesn't matter which mystical trend they're coming from, or wisdom pathway. But it all is kind of pointing to the same thing of like getting in getting in deeper levels of integrity with who you are on all levels, from the level of consciousness down to the level of physical, and starting to show up in ways that actually reflect that. Because then the collaborative possibilities that become available are unlike anything of when you're trapped in your own, those 4 responses, your smaller reality, your more mundane way of moving, thinking, being, etc. And that to me is where it is, it is heaven on earth, because the experience of the depth of interconnectivity, first in our own selves, right? Where we get that tensile strength, we get that integration, we get that like, whoa, I have choices here. Like I can move under it. I can move over it. I can move through it. I can push it down. Like, right. We have just a lot more options. Yeah. Great on the individual level. But then when it starts to open, right. These different ways of being able to connect, to communicate, and the thrill of that, and not just the immediate thrill of like, oh, a good chocolate ice cream cone or whatever. Right. But the thrill of, wow, I am actually as a human being, as a component of conscious evolution, like I'm able to do something that hasn't been done before, because these practices have opened my subtle sensitivities and receptive capacity, but also my capacity to act in alignment with something that otherwise I wouldn't even know is going on.
Right. Yeah. And I think all that beautifully stated stuff that you just said is kind of enriching our sense of having meaning in life, right? So we get to we're kind of collaborating with ourselves initially, right? And really, we're collaborating with ourselves in a way we never did before.
Right.
And then from there, we start to be open to collaborating with others. And then that collective collaboration, such as that creative process happening out in Maryland, starts to redefine what it's like to be in relationship with healers and taking care of ourselves when we aren't well, or simply when we want to be healthier than we are right now. Maybe we're just okay, but we want to be healthier than we are right now, And so, I think that the good news is that I just see more and more tools coming out. It was great to see Desiree has her book coming out on strong, people for over 50. And, my pal Nina Zolotov and I, who have been writing together, we've been collaborating for 6 years. It's kind of mind blowing, when you work with other people and then you look at time and you're like, holy smoly, it's been 6 years. And we're like, wow, we have a book here. And, so we've got our contribution coming out in December, and we're really excited about that. But it's like, that's great. But I think collectively we see this wonderful movement, so once we're open as individuals and we want to have a team, those tools from Desiree and Baxter and Nina and from Kate and her podcast, all this stuff starts to give us direction. It's not like we know where we're going exactly, right? But we know that we want to continue on the journey. We're not done by any means, growing and expanding and creating. And I think for me, it's like, how do I continue to create meaning in life? How do I create community? How do I add value to the community that I live in so that we improve the quality of life instead of retreating into me versus you or us versus them, which is the crazy dialogue we see every day going on. It's like, how can I say, okay, that's one semi-reality that some people live in, but on a real everyday level, I know that I can live in another reality that's very tangible and very real.
Yeah.
And
how way more fun. I mean, really.
Oh my God. Right. Yeah. Right. To have joy and play in your life and to be, the creative process is really exciting when it happens.
Yeah.
Right? Very exciting. The energy that's released in that moment gets us in the flow, gets us into those grooves that people talk about longingly. Maybe they had it once or twice in their life. And people that are doing it regularly, they go, hey, you can actually have this a lot if you really want it. Not in that crazy addictive way that we think about other highs or pleasures, but in a really rich, soulful way.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
And then people thank you for it. I mean, and that's the trip, right? Of like, you're doing exactly what you want to be doing. You're having more fun than ever, and people thank you for it. But I want to bring this into, I can't remember the exact study, but I know there's a study done on adults over 70 years old, and it showed that the entrepreneurs, so people who were self-employed and really like directing their own reality, they were, and it was extreme. I want to say that like 70% of them decided not to retire. Right?
Wow.
Because they were so into the next thing, and they were finally getting the kind of traction and like this sort of clarity, this mental focus, everything we've been talking about, which is part of, like you said, the Healthspan, right? Is part of a different way of relating to. Now, like by the time you get started, you've run so many tests, you've run so many experiments, you've seen you've seen so many breakthroughs, so many failures. There's this accumulated wisdom. that now you can really make bigger things happen more easily, more quickly,
Mm,
and you're able to collaborate at a different level just because of accumulated wisdom. So
right.
why would you cash in your chips for what? For
Yeah. For
basically,
what? So what is I mean, I think about this the same way I think about the American dream being owning a house and thinking that that suddenly means you've arrived, where basically your landlord now is the Bank of America instead of your landlord. I mean, so the idea that when I retire, I'm going to get to like be on a permanent vacation and it's going to be really awesome. And we know the reality. Most people do that and they become lonely and bored and suicidal and sick because a lot of people don't actually take advantage of that new freedom that they might have to collaborate and be creative. And I have so many students now who are in their 60s or 70s, and they're continuing to choose to work because it's so gratifying. And they actually are doing exactly what they want and not what society said they needed to do to make a living. So they figured that out, that, wow, I can actually do what I want to do, sometimes by myself, but sometimes in collaboration. And why would I give this up? I get to set my hours. I get to work at the places with the people that I like and the settings that I want. And it's an amazing thing. So again, we have to redefine what is retirement, or what is the third of our life that some people are calling that last, that nice section of time.
Yeah.
That's taking us into the great mystery, So
yeah. So I've tried to bring back the word elder, and a lot of my older course members and clients, they don't like it. Like they associate it with elderly. Have you guys come up with any other? Like the wisdom years. I'm like, we need some new words. We definitely need some new vocabulary.
Melina, do we have a good name for people who are older, who are like in their power? I'm talking to Melina, who I co-teach the Yoga for Healthy Aging intensives with. But do we have a phrase that we've been talking about? Like, how do we refer to our older students where they really get jazzed by being in that third phase? Can you think of anything? Nothing's popping to mind, but
I know we need it. We need a word. I mean, empowered elder is about as close as
empowered elder. Yeah,
because there is something that time we do want. I love. I think the word in yoga is vinayam, and it's like the power of time. Right, when you've accumulated time, it's very different than when you have a lack of accumulated time.
Well, and think about, in Greek and Roman times, being Pliny the Elder was a good thing.
Yeah,
you were wiser than Pliny the Younger.
Yeah,
and so yeah, I always tell the story about other cultures like Okinawans who fight to have the older adult come to live with them in their house. It's considered the sign of a great blessing on your household if that wisdom gets to come into your house, right? So I think maybe giving the adjective before the word elder, right? Like our revered elder.
Yeah.
That it's not a negative thing. It's like, wow, you've arrived. You have arrived in your power and your wisdom. But that's a great thing. I'm going to think about that some more, Kate. I'm going to see if I can't come up. I love wordplay, and maybe I can come up with something that will be acceptable and exciting for our students who are, and our clients who are over 50, over 60, over 70.
Yeah, let me know, because I think it's like, and it's coming. It's like if we're both thinking about it, it's like, to me, that's a sign that there's a zillion people thinking about the same thing, and it's coming. Just like the conscious entrepreneurship, all of a sudden it's like everywhere. So one last question around I like to follow the biohacking community a bit, because I find they take risks, they run experiments, they're really looking for. To me, it's like Svatantria, like that complete freedom. I've used that word a lot, but it's like they're just free to experiment in a way that's outside of cultural bounds in many ways. And a lot of them are talking about like life, just this longevity or life extension. Is it BS in your opinion? Like, how much is our expiration date a mindset? How much is it? How much do we really have to play with there, especially for those who are willing to do whatever, whatever works.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I don't, that's a huge question. I think about it. I don't have a really good answer for it. I wonder if someone said to me, I can do some genetic CRISPR technology on you tomorrow, and you're going to I can guarantee that you're going to live to 100. I would say that's fine, but can you guarantee that my knees are going to be good enough that I can go out and hit the tennis ball around until I'm, 99?
Yeah.
Because again, it's always that. I love Atul Gawande's book that he wrote recently on being mortal. I don't know if you've read that book, but he says in these conversations we should be having with our brothers and sisters, our parents, our aunts and uncles, about what are the important things for you in the quality of your life as you get older. What are the things you cannot live without? That's the more important question. Is if I live to be 95 or 93 like my grandma Lepresto did, what are the things that I literally cannot live without that define the quality of my life?
In my experience, the biohackers are asking that question. You know what I mean? They're not just like, how old am I going to get with, no holds barred. It's more of like with the most mental capacity, the physical strength, the collaborative agility, socially, et cetera. Like it's from the people that I'm following are definitely having that. So it sounds like it's a big, like no one knows, because it seems like there's so many different opinions at this point, and we don't have the stats.
We don't have the stats. The stats we have say that, longevity is fixed in certain cultural areas, to a certain, the average lifespan is this. It hasn't shifted a lot in the last 50 years or so, since we had better hygiene and antibiotics and the things that kind of gave us a bump. And so then, is the next big shift this kind of biotech, stuff? And it may be. And again, with the potential benefit of longer age, what are the unexpected downsides that we're going to discover, right? So it's always like that Pandora's box. So you live to 100, and now we've got a couple new cool diseases that show up, so all that stuff, where's the balance going to be in that? So it's an intriguing thing to observe and watch. And I'm sure we're going to see plenty of it in the remainder of my lifetime. I'm sure we're going to continue to see it on a yearly basis. It's going to start coming at us fast and furious.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then what are some of the, just from I love how Ayurveda and yoga always look for the side benefits. It's like, what are some of the other possibilities that start to open up, especially from an empowered elder kind of population that is, full circuits open, collaborating and discovering new ways to leverage their, the wisdom of humanity over time.
Right. And can we spread that out to larger populations? So is it only going to be the super wealthy who can live to 100?
Yep.
Right. So otherwise, because if we don't do that, then, there'll be an insulated little group of people that get taken care of into that age, and everybody else is going to be, stuck in the same conundrum that they might feel like they're in right now. So I think it's like, how can we elevate everyone and not stick to just the super, super wealthy?
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, to me, it's kind of crazy how, when people start doing, whether it's yoga, meditation, mindfulness, qigong, like you name it, right? They start doing something, all of a sudden they start noticing, like, wow, most of the modalities are free, right? Like I can breathe deeper. I can drink more water. I can buy organic produce in bulk, or like there's all these things like I can stop eating at a restaurant. I can stop drinking alcohol. Wow, my costs plummet. Oh my gosh, like what actually sustains me at a healthier level simplifies my life, simplifies my reality, gets me out of emotional spending or careless, right? And all of a sudden we start to realize like, oh wow, the best of the training's on YouTube for free. Really, like the information's out there, not necessarily the community, the collective, the other things that will help you gain traction, but like to me, it's never been such a level playing field.
Yeah. If it can be clearly articulated and broadly disseminated, right? So yeah, it's there. And now it's getting the folks that aren't tapped into that and getting them interested and drawing them in, right?
Yeah.
So, so maybe having Baxter Bell, MD on the cover of a book will get, 20,000 more people thinking about that who never would have picked up the book otherwise that said yoga on the cover. Right. So, and I think, you've had some other progressive thinkers in medicine and stuff on the show. And I think, those of us that are doing it, we just got to, keep going at it really strong.
Yeah.
And, I'm excited because I might be collaborating with someone I just met at a dinner party the other night who's a cardiologist who's developing an app that's trying to improve diet to get people to start thinking. And it's, again, information's already out there.
Yeah.
But again, getting into a way of delivering that. Or a new medical school that's going to be starting up through Kaiser that wants to integrate a wellness track into the curriculum that the medical students have to participate in, where they're doing yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong. They're journaling. They have homework assignments. They have to pass the course in wellness so that they'll actually know about this stuff when they go to, can you imagine? They start counseling their patients finally, right?
Yeah.
That's in development. And hopefully that school starts in 2019. So, all these things are, again, all simmering, heading in a good direction. And, we're going to kind of keep that up in a strong way, hopefully for a long time to come.
Awesome. Thanks, Baxter. It's been a blast.
All right, Kate, thanks for having me on.
You bet.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, dear podcast listeners, I want you to think of just one person that needs to hear this conversation. There's got to be someone in your life that's age 50 plus, age 60 plus, age 70 plus, and really needs a subtle nudge in the right direction, who needs a dose of their own potentiality. Please show them how to listen to a podcast by opening up their iPhone and showing them that, yes, indeed, they actually have a podcast app right there. And then type in Yoga Healer, all one word, and this show will come up. And then just add a little plus subscribe thing, and then show them this episode, and then press play, and send them on a walk to listen. And they will, you know what? They will be so glad that you helped them tap into this amazing world of free wellness inspiration. All right, have a great week. Oh, on our next show, you guys are going to love this one. Dharma Dollar Show, Dr. Kulri Chowdhury, who has this lineage as in Ayurveda and in family physicians and all that. And she's quite an amazing woman. And we really dive into Dharma, how Dharma stretches us. You are going to love it. It's a fantastic episode. All right, that's coming next Dharma Dollar Show. Signing off.
Yoga Healer Real Life Show with Kate Stillman. Yoga Healer.